Hello,
Right.
my name is Paxton, and today I have Carla here from VHF. So, Carla, if you would introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Carla Boucher, and I currently sit on the board of VHF. And so I was tickled when I heard that you wanted to interview someone. And I know that part of that is due to my journey. First of all, because I do sit on the VHF board, and second, because I have a rare bleeding disorder called delta storage pool deficiency.
Really happy to have you today, and thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to me and share a little bit about your story and your journey. So, I guess first major question would be, how did you first become involved in the bleeding disorders community? What did that look like? What sparked that engagement?
I first found out about VHF through a friend who was already a member with a child that had a bleeding disorder different than ours. So I was aware of it tangentially, wasn't involved in any way. In the process of having my son diagnosed, it is an inherited bleeding disorder, and we both have it. So, in the process of having him diagnosed, he was around age, I think, 11 or 12. Um, my friend encouraged me to utilize whatever resources I thought would be helpful with VHF online. Then I started going to a couple meetings. Initially, I think in the process of accepting the diagnosis and learning about it, which is a little tough online because it is rare. And so I only came across repeatedly the same couple studies or the same few articles. So it didn't take long to exhaust research that was readily available. So, not saying in the scientific community it's not there, but things that we could digest. And so, my initial few activities that I went to with VHF, I seriously questioned whether we were maybe utilizing or taking up some finite resources like a spot at a meeting or a spot at the picnic for, and maybe we weren't in the right place because ours is rare. I didn't hear it mentioned very frequently, if at all. And we were just very shy about and conscious of not taking resources because we were just learning our way. That was probably, I was trying to remember, 5 or 6 years ago. So that's the how I found out about it. And as far as becoming involved, I wouldn't say initially, even as a family, I mean, we went to things, but we were pretty shy and reserved, just trying to get the lay of the land. So it's probably been only in the last maybe 2019 or 2020, such as it was, that we became more involved, started going to more activities, started helping out more, which is only fair and right. So that's, there's that time when we started 5 or 6 years ago. And then more recently is what I would really label being involved because we were contributing in some way.
Absolutely. I guess a little follow-up to that would be, since you're satisfying many different roles, you're a community member, you've done some volunteer work with VHF, and then you're also sitting on the board of directors. What do those different roles look like? Like, what is your day-to-day satisfying those various roles? How do they intersect for you? So like, what do you do within this community?
Yes, so being able to take advantage of the programming and the resources is very easy. Like there wasn't a lot of time commitment, and it didn't feel like a commitment anyway. When we started attending functions, they were always fun, and they still are. So that part is really easy, and I don't feel like I necessarily give back as much as I take from those. It's such a great thing, and I'm so fortunate to be able to meet other families and other people who have inherited bleeding disorders. I would say then it seemed like a natural progression for me. As my professional life slows down, it felt like I had more and more time. I have two sons. They're both Eagle Scouts. And so we were a scouting family, which took a lot of family time. And once they aged out of that, it seemed natural that I should do something for a different community to give back. And this was just the perfect fit. The time that I spend sitting on the board is certainly much more involved than attending an event a weekend here or a weekend there. We, particularly as a family, didn't stray too much outside of our geographic area. If we went west to Richmond, that's pretty much what we did. as a board member, it's very gracious that we also are asked that if we can participate geographically to do so, but there's like no burden to go further than our own geographic area. But I would say that the demands aren't necessarily higher. I would say my opportunity, because I'm at a place where I want to give of my time in that way, in like a leadership or in being more of a helper, I can certainly do that. And the opportunity to do it is frequent, like several times a month. Some months, other months are less busy, but the opportunity to spend time is there. This is a great organization, and there's a great history that's led up. I'm very new with it. I've only been on the board. This is my first year, and I've only been on the board maybe a couple months. And I think I always feel as a board member that I am never pressured to give more time than I have, but the opportunities are always clearly presented, which as a volunteer, I've ran volunteer organizations and volunteer endeavors and up to 300 volunteers at a time. So I have that sympathy, if it is, or empathy for trying to run a group of volunteers, whether they're board members or grassroots volunteers. So I've had a great experience so far. I'm really enjoying it.
That's great. It sounds like you're very immersed in the community and have a lot of knowledge and things that you bring to the table. And also being able to kind of learn from others and experience the different perspectives that people bring onto that table as well. So my next question for you would be, what is something that you would hope people outside of our community would know or understand about us? You know, something that maybe someone who doesn't have a bleeding disorder or someone who doesn't have a mother, a son, a friend impacted by a bleeding disorder. What do you want somebody outside of our community to know?
I think that our organization does a really good job, and nationally, we've all begun to do a great job, like an even better than a really good job in making people aware that a bleeding disorder looks different. There can be a saying that says if you've met one person who has a rare or a bleeding disorder, you've met one person who has a bleeding disorder, because the way that physiologically we all respond to the disorder we have, sure, there's some hallmarks of each type of bleeding disorder, but there's not really one universal picture of this is what a day in the life looks like. And so I think that's important for people to understand. But I think universally, I'm hopeful that most people outside the community, they can empathize or understand, because I think a lot of life is like that. I'm sure we could insert where we would say one person with a bleeding disorder, we could say one person with diabetes or one person with any struggle in their life. Then you've met one person, right? Because we all deal with it differently. We all come at our coping mechanisms from a different style of life. Like, we just don't know. So I'm really hopeful that not only is that what I would like people to understand, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of explaining that with our resources, particularly online.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think that individualized, personalized part of it is so important, and it's going to be different in every person. There are so many factors at play, right? So my next question for you is, what is some sort of goal or hope that you have, something that you want to achieve during your time with VHF, or some vision, maybe a greater vision that you have for our community?
So I feel so fortunate that my time on the board is right now, because right now is a really exciting time for VHF, working on the next strategic plan for the organization and the legislative work that's ongoing. I think those are the two places where I feel at home, and I feel like I can contribute something other. It's important to have a voice, but it's really important to be able to feel like that voice is something that I've practiced on behalf of others and had the privilege professionally to work with other organizations that did not necessarily have something to do with an interest of mine or medical issue of mine. And so it's just really exciting. But those are the two things that I'm most excited and could probably talk your ear off about, is both the strategic plan and how do we move forward as a community and an organization, and the legislative work that lies in front of us.
So we've talked a little bit about where we see VHF going in the future and what that path forward looks like. In terms of reflection, I guess, what is a favorite event or favorite memory that you've had during your time with VHF, whether that's during a couple of months as a board member or even before that when you said you were a volunteer, a community member?
I think my favorite event so far is the most recent medical symposium we had at Great Wolf Lodge. I just felt like I really recognized or saw growth in the community from our members and our constituency to the board to the medical representation that was there through drug reps or whoever. I just felt like it was a really cohesive meeting experience. It was great socially. There was adequate time to talk to people, and just the new information. And of course, a particular favorite of mine, the spotlight on some of the rare bleeding disorders was super helpful. And I really felt like seen. I know that's a catchphrase, but I did. I felt like my path and my journey was really recognized. And for the first time, it seemed like it was a really great place to be able to take a moment and openly share my journey without the concern that maybe it would detract from the advocacy, for example, that needed to be done for hemophilia, right? That's the balance, is to try to make sure the community as a whole, that all of those needs are met and all of the issues are seen without detracting from one another. And it's a great group of people. And I feel like we're all kind of single-minded about that, where we are looking out for one another. And it's okay when we're sharing our journey, because each time we do, it's bolstering the community as a whole.
That's great. I'm also seeing that through NBDF and some of the involvement that I've had with the national organization, that it's, I think, becoming a very inclusive, supportive community, and that's great for everybody involved. So
Yes.
it's amazing to hear that it's also really taken flight, I guess, on the local level that is VHF. My next question for you is, how has your experience changed prior to finding this community as well as after? So when you had this diagnosis and your family had these diagnoses that you were grappling with, versus once you found the supportive network that is VHF, and did finding that space with others who have both similar and different experiences within the realm of bleeding disorders, how has that impacted you?
So our journey for a diagnosis took a really long time. I wasn't even aware that I had a bleeding disorder. I was aware that I had hurdles and struggles throughout my youth and adolescence. And I think I grew up in a generation, particularly as a female, where a monthly cycle, for example, it was just something that all women had to work through. And when most women aren't talking about it, because even in high school in a group of girls, that's not the first topic that comes up, right? And so there's not a lot of sharing information that's easy to find. And then when it's something as personal as that, or it could even be like bruising easy in a way that's unexplained, I just, as an adolescent, like many girls, want to feel different. And so I didn't have a mechanism to talk about that. And I certainly didn't have a diagnosis. And then when my son was showing signs that something was happening, when he was born, he was tested for von Willebrand's and hemophilia, and those were negative. And so it was really difficult throughout his really young years, up, being a toddler. Anytime we had a situation that seemed different medically, it was not a crisis, thank goodness. But because it wasn't a crisis, it's super hard for the physicians and for us as parents to say, wait, something is wrong, or something's different, or something needs addressed, without being able to know what that something was. And so that's sort of a long-winded way to get to my point, which is, once we became aware of VHF and we did get involved, it really was helpful to realize that we were not alone. And it wasn't that it took a long time for a diagnosis because of any deficiency of ours. Not that it's a deficiency of the medical community either, but we certainly could not have known what we didn't know. We weren't the experts at the table. And to hear other people have those same feelings and experiences made it just feel like, okay, we're okay. We did the best we could and it was pretty good, versus maybe those lingering feelings of why didn't we catch this sooner, or what could we have said better as parents. And so, gosh, I mean, it's been invaluable to have that experience now of a whole community. It's irreplaceable.
That's incredible. That's I think, I mean, that's probably, you know, when it what it boils down to, right? What VHF and then also NBDF as a whole, what these organizations really want people to get out of their programming, right? That sense of community and belonging, and understanding that while you and I may have very different experiences within the same bleeding disorder, or maybe because we have different bleeding disorders, we have this shared, united experience of having one, right? And that sometimes can feel isolating, but when you're with other people who have that shared experience, makes everything a little bit easier.
It sure
Um,
does.
so I guess I'd also like to know, since you've been involved in a couple different capacities, a couple different spheres, what would you say to those community members who are on the periphery, who are thinking about getting involved, who are maybe longing for that community piece that those of us who are involved have the privilege of having, right? What would you say to them of I guess, overcoming that hurdle to ultimately get involved? What can they do? Why should they make that jump?
So my advice or encouragement is, don't let the fear of not having enough time prevent them from raising a hand or putting their name in the hat for something. I feel like we are, it is, I don't know, we have this unique magic in VHF that Heather and Kelly specifically do such a great job that if there's someone on the periphery and they're like, I'd really like to help, but I'm not sure how much time, my children are young, or I have professional demands or something else, that just helping with something like making sure the drinks are iced at one event that they're already going to, that helping doesn't necessarily mean additional time in the community, but it every helping hand makes the work less, right? So I would really encourage people that if that's what's holding them back, to just realize there's something for everybody, no matter if it's 1 hour or 10 hours, or it's something that we don't even calculate in hours. There's something for everybody. And if they want to try something new and get out of their comfort zone, there's something. If they want to stay in their comfort zone, if they're not articulate or they just don't like being in the limelight, there's always work to be done, like physical work, stocking drinks or trying to send an email or something that can be done behind the scenes. And we've got a great leadership with Heather and Kelly to be able to find something that is a really good fit for people that are on the verge of wanting to volunteer other than an attendance, which is a form of volunteerism, because our community isn't our community without people being there.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Um, those are the questions that I have. So I just want to take a second to thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your experiences with me and with our audience. So I guess I'll give you the opportunity if there's anything else that you'd like to share, any final thoughts, parting words, anything to end it. But thank you for your time as well.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I really can't wait to hear your story. I'm just getting to know you, and it sounds like you're already so active. And clearly, if you're still at the university, you're still quite young. And so it's really great to see that you are really being a role model for other university or high school kids to be able to follow and know that we all have a place in the community. We didn't ask for that, but it's okay. We're all here for each other. And I appreciate so much that you are willing to step up and step out. And I wouldn't have known that I shared a bleeding disorder with anyone else in my community yet had you not reached out to me. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time.